Hey, hey. Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Sunday. If you are on here, first of all, get those likes up, tag anybody. Share this with anyone that you think may find it interesting. Also, shout out to our newest member, Daper Gents. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you a part of the team. I appreciate you. I will be dropping another Black Men Built That video to the members only. Um, Side of things. So stay tuned and thank you so much again for joining. I really appreciate you and all of you guys who are just here who have been supporting me in general, riding with me, supporting whether through channel membership, Cash App, Super Chats, all of that. I really appreciate you. Like I said, I do my best to try to bring you content that's entertaining, informative, educational, whatever. But this is a group effort. So again, I appreciate all of you guys who are just so generous and who have been rocking with me. Like I really do. I really do. But I wanna just get right into this topic. I came across this documentary. It was trending. It was trending on Netflix, and like always, I decided to binge watch something over the weekend. And it was entitled "Bad Vegan." Now, those of you who are not familiar with this topic or just with this documentary, basically what it was a mini series that went over the rise and the fall, really, of Sarma. I don't even want to try to pronounce her last name. I don't want to butcher it. But her first name is Sarma, right? And she basically like owned this top high end raw vegan restaurant in New York City, which for a long time was like it was world renowned, and then it eventually went defunct. And so it follows her story on how she became really popular, how the restaurant took off, how it really started to grow in popularity and fame, and then why it fell. Um, but the interesting thing about this, and the reason I wanted to cover off, is because I think there are certain themes in this series documentary that I think that can apply to just women today in particular, especially career minded women. And I think there's a few lessons we can take away from it so that we can learn from, at the very least, her mistakes, or just the very least use this as an example of the different ways that well-meaning people can fall into traps that will really end up ruining their lives. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. Again, if you're just joining me, get those likes up. Yeah, see, I haven't seen it. Interested to hear about it. I was interested to learn about it because, I actually, if y'all didn't know, I pretended to be a vegan for like a good year. And I say pretend because I would like be vegan for like 30, 40 days or something. Then I would just be tired of it. I get hungry and then I would eat meat again. Then I go back to being vegan. So I did that for a good year. And then I figured out, look, like I support those who are plant-based. I support it 100%. I just couldn't do it because I was just too hungry all the time. And I got tired of being hungry. Like I was eating like 3,000, 3,500 calories a day, like just trying to stay full. Like I just couldn't do it. But again, for those who can, hats off. And I've always been interested in the lifestyle. I love food. I love healthy food. So this documentary to me really stood out. But I want to just kind of get started on just how this whole happened. So if you are not familiar with the story, really, it starts off, the documentary starts off just kind of going through her life, who she was. She said she was a very kind of quiet, introverted person who wanted to do things different. She kind of went against the grain. She was the kind of the awkward person at school, didn't really fit in that much. Make a long story short, though, she was really into food. She was, she always had a food. And while she went to college, and I think initially was focusing on like business or finance or something like that, in college, she figured out that food was her passion. And she went into that direction. And then make a long story short, she started, this raw vegan restaurant and in New York City. And she was one of the first ones to really kind of take that whole industry and make it high end, because previous to that, it was kind of, associated with like hippies and kind of eccentric people. But she was really one of the first people to kind of create that whole concept of beating a raw vegan diet, which, if you're not sure what raw vegan is, not only is it plant-based, but it is food that is uncooked. So that means if you're eating something that is raw vegan, it cannot go above a certain temperature. So that restaurant, it didn't have ovens, like it didn't have microwaves, like everything was uncooked. It had to go through it. It goes through a totally separate process in order to be considered done. But she was the first one to really take that concept and make it like sexy, make it cutting edge, make it exciting. And with that, it got to where there was different celebrities coming in. Um there were different actors, like it got a lot of different support. And so that is, that's kind of her story. And the interesting thing about it is, as she's going in there, as she's building the business, what the documentary sort of shows is that at the height, as her business was really booming, um, as things are really going off, that is emotionally, psychologically, that is when she was struggling the most. So another aspect of this backstory is that essentially, when she started this restaurant, she was working with like another chef who at the time was her boyfriend. So they were kind of working together. So a lot of the marketing of this new cutting edge restaurant was with pictures of him and her, him and her cooking, him and her together. And so it was kind of like this love story that kind of helped bring this restaurant forward. And then when they broke up, he left and she continued. So like I said, as the business grew, as the restaurant continued to get more popularity, she started having actors and actresses come by. She started becoming movie stars, a lot of different people. She was gaining recognition around the world. But again, it highlighted that around that time, internally, she was not doing okay. She was doing well financially, or well, the restaurant was starting to do well financially. The restaurant was starting to take off. She's really starting to get, play in her career. But when she took off the restaurant hat, when she took off the hat of being the boss baby, she took off the hat of being the one in the kitchen, running the shots and giving people the different directions on what to do. When she was just herself, she said she was lonely. She was lonely. And that is one of the things to me that really stood out. And it highlights that beautifully in the first episode. Like I said, it's about a 4-part miniseries, but in the first episode, it really kind of highlights that this dichotomy of her career doing well, and as her career continues to expand and move forward, yet psychologically, emotionally inside she's struggling. And like I said, around the time that her business is booming, she did break up with her boyfriend, who at that time was a chef. He got let go. And so there's that strange dichotomy going on. And that's like the backdrop of the story. Again, if you're on here, get those likes up. I said, I hear raw veganism is better for you, but I have reservations about bacteria, especially with transportation practices. It's interesting that you say that, because depending upon who you talk to, you're going to hear about 50 different things. You're going to hear some people who say, raw veganism is there's issues with it. Your body has a hard time digesting certain vegetables and fruits when it's in its raw form. It should be cooked. So you'll hear that side. You'll hear one side that says, no, there's not enough protein. There's the more I understand food and nutrition, the less I am likely to be like every single person has to eat this particular way. I really think it comes down to what works for your body. Like I said, I tried to be vegan and I say try because I legitimately did it, but I just found where I would hit certain parts of the day when I was just so hungry. And like I said, I didn't care if I ate legumes, avocado, fish oil, or not fish oil. You can't do that. But legumes, avocado, or nut butters, and like tempeh, tofu, like all the different kind of forms of plant protein. And at the end of the day, I just was hungry. I was like, it didn't hit me the way it would like if I just had some roasted chicken. So that's like for me, how I was like, okay, I'm down with this, but I can't do this long term. But hats off to those who can, y'all. Hats off to those who can. Again, shout out to David James with the 5 on the man on the super chat. Again, I'm appreciating all this love support. I really do. Thank you. And please let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name. I really hope I'm saying it right. I think it's Daber. I don't know if it's Daber or Dapper, but I hope I'm saying it right. If I'm not, please forgive me. It's not intentional. You said half of those foods are going over my head. Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all. I can geek out. I can really geek out when it comes to food. Trust me. Like I said, you don't understand how much of a closet foodie I am. So you have to forgive me if I just went kind of deep there. But anyway, so okay, yeah. So that's the backdrop. The first episode, basically, you have a successful woman that's starting to get all this popularity, and but internally, emotionally, she said she is sad, and she's lonely. She's lonely. another interesting thing to note about her is that, throughout the documentary, they talked to her dad, they talked to her sister, so they kind of interview a few people in her family. Her dad had mentioned that she decided she didn't want to have kids. Her dad had mentioned that. Um, and so that was kind of just like it was like a side note. It was like a side note, but that was out there. So that she for all intents and purposes was very much a modern woman. Didn't want to have kids. That didn't really seem to be a topic that came up at all. She said as a young girl, she didn't want to do things traditionally. Like she didn't feel like she was meant to just, she felt like she didn't fit in the mold. She felt like she didn't fit in the square, box. And so she was, again, very much a modern woman, very much paving her own way. And that is partially why she had a very successful run. Now, as we move forward into the series, what we start to find is, again, as her career is progressing and as things are moving forward, she meets this gentleman. And the interesting thing about this man, who would eventually become her husband, is that I guess the side story goes that he, let me see. So this man who, Anthony, who I think took on a few different names just to change his identity, right? But this man right here, this is when I'm in struggle right here. You see in the mugshot. She meets him, and actually they kind of meet through a mutual friend. So the fun thing about it, as I mentioned before, her restaurant was really popular, and there was like a lot of movie stars that were coming in and out of the restaurant because it was so well known in New York. And she said that there was one person in particular, Alex Baldwin. You guys are familiar with him, American actor. She said early on she feels like he had a crush on her. He pursued her a couple of times, had made it clear that he was interested in starting a relationship. She declined. She said each time he said he wanted relationships, he said, hey, you know what? I'm not interested, but you might want to have a dog. And so literally, she is turning down the pursuits of Alec Baldwin, who is a multimillionaire American actor, very, 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 very famous. You guys know, very, very financially well off, and she turns him down. She strictly turns him down. And you said the site pronunciation is correct. This book suits. Okay. She said he looks crazy, her boyfriend. Yeah, that is actually her husband. Her husband. But anyways, she turns him down. So successful businesswoman freaking has a multi-millionaire actor hitting on her, pursuing her multiple times. She's like uninterested, just turns him down. So that's the backstory, right? Now, Alec Baldwin had a friend, this gentleman right here. His name is Anthony. Make a long story short, they, become friends, and what's really unclear is whether or not it was like a real love story, or whether or not it, like, if she really fell in love with him, or it was more of a control thing. We don't know. But at the end of the day, what happens is she meets this guy who was mutual friends with Alec Baldwin on Twitter. They start a friendship, relationship, and it just kind of continues down there. And what we see throughout the series is this relationship. It's really unsettling to people in her life. It's really unsettling to like her employees, the people who are working for her. Even her family is questionable. Like, everybody in her life is not necessarily feeling this dude. But for some reason, she decides to give him the time of day. And again, the backdrop of this is that she, for whatever reason, gives attention to this random Anthony dude, while for some reason turning down multimillionaire Alec Baldwin, who is now married and has kids with somebody else. But for some reason, Alec Baldwin was not worth pursuing things with, but this random no-name guy was. Curious, isn't it? I see. Which show was this yesterday? So this was a Netflix documentary for those of you guys who are on. It is a Netflix documentary that I watched. It's like a four episode series, but I wanted to touch upon it because I think that there are some themes that I saw in this series that I think are applicable to women today, especially women who want to be boss babes, who are really career minded and really focused on wanting to level up. I thought that there were just some really interesting situations that she experienced that any of us, if we're not aware of, could find ourselves in. So that's why I wanted to cover it off. Yeah, it said bad vegan fame. Exactly, that one. But anyway, so like I said, she this businesswoman, as her business is growing, she gets pursued by a multi-millionaire, turns him down for some reason, decides to open her art up to this kind of random guy, Anthony, that nobody really knows about. They go on to say in the series that not only has nobody really knows what he does. Anytime she asks him, he's very very unclear, very nebulous, very mysterious. Doesn't talk about it much. Is very like fun. He's just very funny style about everything. Like, she asks blatant questions like, "Oh, what is this? What is that?" And he just kind of skirts around it. So there's these clear, obvious red flags earlier on in the relationship, and yet she continues, and yet she continues, and she continues. What's going on, Eugene? What's going on? I see. Yeah. And usually when successful women will date men that aren't famous or money stable, it's because they want to be in the man in the relationship. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Yes, and I said so many options. She picked bad. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And we're going to get into that. Also, y'all, if you're on here, get those likes up. Get those likes up. Also, if you would like to show support to the show, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo. Shay Sade. Yeah, find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. Also, shout out to Hakeem for the 10 on the Cash App. I appreciate you. Also, I want to give a shout out to DeMarcus Smith, who sent a 20 on the Cash App yesterday. Appreciate all y'all. Again, if y'all want to show some love and support, you can hit the super chat. I will be sure to acknowledge all super chats. But anyways, yeah, so like I said, here's a successful woman that has movie stars are going in and out. Okay, they are going in and out of her restaurant. She got one hitting on her multiple times, asking her out. She decides, for whatever reason, to give this no-name dude a time of day. We don't know why, but she does it. Gives him the time of day. Again, I appreciate you. You said it was Dapper Gents, right? I think I need to record it. I think that's what you said. That's how you pronounce it. I think that's what it is. Let me know if I'm wrong. Yeah, I'll be slow sometimes. So you have to remind me multiple times, but I'm gonna get it. But thank you for the 5. Thank you for the 5. Yeah, so she gives this dude a time of day. They, make a long story short, have a shotgun wedding. Yeah, you said, yeah. They had a shotgun wedding. I don't think anybody in her family even went or knew about it. They have a shotgun wedding. And then the whole story goes, so here's the story. The story goes that he says, this dude right here in the mugshot, right? He says, oh my gosh, I've been looking for you all my life and all these other lives. He says, I've been reincarnated, and through all these reincarnated lives, I've been looking for you. And then in this particular life, I finally found the one I love. I finally find the one my heart has been longing for. Okay. Right. So there's this whole beautiful love story that destiny and all these different lives have brought us to this moment today, like now. That's kind of like his pitch to her, that you are the love, not only of this life, but of all these multiple lives that I have had to struggle through to reach you. So I don't know if that's what pulled her in, but that is kind of this backstory. And then he kind of goes on to share the story of like, okay, now that, for marriage, if you follow me, if you follow my direction and do what I say, you're going to have a even better life. Now, mind you, she already has a really successful business. She's her business is taking off. She's getting to the point where she could be making more money and expanding her restaurant into different nations and even different countries. So she's already doing well. But somehow he comes in and convinces her that, hey, if you follow me, your life is going to get even better. And then here's the kicker. Evidently, she doesn't want to have kids, but she has this dog that she absolutely loves. He says, if you follow me and do what I say, your dog is going to be immortal. That's the pitch. So they get married. He, shares this love story with her that says, you're the love of all of my many lives that I've had. And also, you just believe in me, your dog's going to become immortal. Now, how this is a story that they're telling us, people. This is a college educated, business multimillionaire businesswoman, right? Or at the very least, her restaurant got to where it was, grossing a couple of million, running a highly successful business in a competitive market as a restaurant owner. And she evidently falls for the story that if she just follows whatever this dude says, her dog's going to be immortal. and she's gonna have the life of her dreams. This is y'all. This this is the story. This is the story. So what that means, she believes in him. They get married, right? And a part of her following him and following this whole larger spiritual plan is that she has to give him money. She has to give him money. And in order for her faith to be tested and approved, she has to give him money. So, it's a couple $1,000s here, and then, a week later it's some more, a couple $1,000s here, and then maybe it's a dozen thousand, and maybe it's 20,000. And so this kind of happens over and over and over and over again. And it gets to the point to where the business shuts down because so much money has been drained. Money gets drained, right? And then because people feel sorry for her, these things happen. They're like, oh my gosh, we love this business. Make a long story short, she gets more loans from people because, they love who she is. They love the restaurant. I mean, look, for a long, she was a well-loved. This is a attractive, blonde, successful business owner. This is the image that many people want when they think boss babe. This is what they want. So of course she's well loved. Of course people want to believe in this image. They want to believe in what she's about. And so she got, she kind of got in a run in some financial problems. People don't really understand why at that point, but she did. The restaurant gets opened again, lasts for a few more months, and the same issue happens. As she's getting money in, it's going to him because he is the one that is calling the shots. He's the one that is saying, hey, if you believe in me, if you just give me a little bit more money, all of her dreams are going to come true. Now, again, this happens. It gets to the point to where not only is she out of money, in order for her to keep this dream going and keep her faith high, she has to take money from her employees, ends up defrauding her employees and taking the money that she's supposed to owe them for their work and gives it to her husband. At the end of the day, I think the total amount of money she gave this dude was over 100, about I think 1.2 million, or a little under like $1.5 million, a little under $1.5 million. He said stuff like this has been on Dr. Phil Wright. He said to Greaves, yeah. So she ends up not paying her employees. Her restaurant again shuts down. She goes on the run. They're on the run for months. They finally get caught by the police. And then, you kind of, the rest is history. She pleads guilty. He pleads guilty. I think she serves like 4 months in jail. It wasn't huge, but she serves like, I think 4 months in jail. He serves a year in jail for defrauding people. She's in about $6 million. She's now in about $6 million of debt. Doesn't have a restaurant, and we don't know where he is. They are now divorced. So you said, so that's the pitch, an immortal dog. Yes. So here, like I said, this is the crazy thing about it, right? Again, quick recap. Successful woman at the height of her career. She is lonely. She meets this guy, mysterious guy. Nobody knows what he does for a living. Nobody really knows who he is, but somehow he has some deep, high spiritual call. She joins him on the spiritual journey. A part of the spiritual journey means that she has to give all of her money to him. And over this happening over a couple of years or whatever, her restaurant ends up going underground because she spent all the money on him. What does he do with the money? He, in the meanwhile, has a gambling addiction. Now, he wouldn't call it an addiction. I think he would just call it maybe a spiritual, maybe a spiritual practice. Who knows what he would call it? But nevertheless, all the money that she was giving to him out of faith, he was gambling it away. And so she lost the hard-earned money that she, built. He gambled it away. Now she doesn't have a restaurant. They're no longer together. She's $6 million in debt. So yeah, I see. Never heard of this. Never heard of this. Yeah, all good. So I know it's kind of a long story, but I wanted to kind of bring you guys into the recap of what this whole crazy story. Anybody looking at this is just like, there is no way anybody in this whole story is mentally well. They're not. I mean, if you look at it, there's some of the different people are just like, yeah, this dude kind of created his own alternate reality. We come to find out this dude before he met her, he had another wife that he had married and ended up defrauding her and stealing all of her money and leaving that woman with a baby. So this dude has a horrible track record. Now, the successful woman who was at the really the prime, the height of her career as it's taking off, She gets connected with this dude and now is $6 million in debt without her restaurant, without a career, with her reputation tarnished. Tarnished. You said, yeah, 6 million. Yes. She's a little over 6 million. I think it's about 6.2. He said she was lonely. How many quality guys did she look over for the extra regular? Right. So here are some of the different things that I gleaned from this story. So again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up. Y'all get those likes up. Tag anybody. Share this with anyone who you think may find it interesting. Also, super chats are open. Feel free to show some love and support. Um, so here's a couple of things that I gleaned from this story. First things first. So this is a modern woman. Didn't want to get have kids. She already said she didn't believe that she was like anyone else. She was abnormal. She was like, what are they? What's that saying? You're a round person. What is it? A round peg in a square hole? Whatever that saying is. But basically, she didn't believe that she was supposed to do things traditionally. She knew that as a young girl. So she, a modern woman, wanted a dog, didn't want kids, was really focused on her career. That was her choice. That was her choice. Now I see basically a white pookie, apps 100% a white pookie. Now the curious thing about this whole scenario is that I think just because a woman decides that they want a career, just because they decide that they don't want to do things the traditional route, right, which is maybe get married when you're young or build a family or whatever, just because you don't want to do that does not necessarily mean that you are still does not mean that you still can't get yourself in trouble. Doing the modern woman thing is not necessarily always an indication that, oh, you're going to avoid all these issues. I've heard many women. I actually was listening, I think it was Daily Wrap Up Crew. I was listening to one of their videos, and then they were interviewing a few women about marriage. And it's funny, in that panel, they asked all the men, and all the men in the panel said, we want marriage. And I think only one of the women on the panel said that they wanted marriage. And the other woman cited, oh, why don't they want marriage? Oh, because we don't want to have bad relationships. Oh, because we don't want, to have bad fill in the blanks. Right. But it's like, already, when she was dating this guy, he was just as dust. He was, the dust was still there. The issues were still there. So the issue does not become necessarily marriage. It doesn't necessarily become, oh, just because you marry somebody, that means that you're automatically going to be abused. You're automatically going to be taken care of. Or if you don't marry somebody, you're going to be okay. No, you can be unmarried. You can do the whole modern woman thing. And if you're mentally unwell, you're still going to get connected with mentally unwell people. This is what happened in her case. She was at like the best moment in her career when she met this guy. Now, why is this important? Because again, the documentary showed that as her business was prospering, mentally and emotionally, she was not. Here is another important component. Just because a woman is successful, just because a woman goes to college, achieves scholastically, is able to really make strides in her career professionally, that does not mean that she is emotionally or relationally capable or healthy. It does not. Being functional or being healthy or being progressive in one area of your life does not mean that all areas are like that. Like for example, you can have great discipline eating, right? You can have great discipline with your eating and be, I don't know, have no discipline in your sex life. Or you can have discipline with your finances and but overeat. You know what I mean? Like, so just because there's one area of your life that is okay and that seems to be prospering, if you don't deal with the other areas of your life, if you still aren't being a balanced person, you are still in a very vulnerable spot. And that's what we see with this for this woman here. She, put a lot of energy in her career and what she loved doing, which was great, but she still had aspects of her start emotionally and mentally that were not dealt with. And she mentioned that where she's just like, yeah, I was lonely, I was upset, when I was took off the boss hat, I felt really depressed. Like, this is essentially the things that she said, and that was a perfect setup for her to be taken advantage of. And I think um it is really important, even for career-minded women, even for boss babes, that in the pursuit of trying to move forward, in the pursuit of trying to level up or, get a better career, whatever it is, if you want to do the modern woman thing, fine. But you can't negate the fact that at the end of the day, we're still women. And there's still aspects of being a woman that are not going to change. I believe women by nature were relational. Even though I think we live in a society where many things are unnatural and many things are just out of whack. However, we put it, we are still relational. We still desire relationship. We desire companionship, many of us. We desire protection, many of us. And she did say that even earlier on when she met this guy, she was like, he was a big, 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 tall guy. At the time, he wasn't obese. Now he was obese towards the end of the marriage. But when he first met, she was tall. He kind of had this mysterious sense about her that she found attractive. And he had this physical appearance of like, oh, he could protect her. And so to her, that was a draw that drew her in. But why was that important? Because when he met her, she was at a point in her life where she was emotionally and spiritually vulnerable. And something about his energy, his toxic energy, was alluring to her. And that's what pulled her in. And like I said, here you have this she's a smart woman, smart enough to know how to run a very successful restaurant, which is a competitive industry to be in. And yet, emotionally or spiritually, there was such a deficiency that she found herself prey to being taken advantage of from literally a nobody. We don't even know, we know nothing about this guy other than the fact that he has a long history of defrauding women. So how did the successful, beautiful blonde who had literally multi-millionaires, you had Alec Baldwin who came at her multiple times, she passed him up. She passed that successful man up for this guy that we don't know like I said, we know nothing about his career other than the fact that he's gambled a lot and he defrauded his previous wife. How did that happen? What would lead a successful, beautiful woman that arguably she could have any man that she wanted, right? She was on covers of magazines, movie stars going in and out, access to them, access to all this wealth, access to the cream of the crop. And she goes for a man who defrauds her. What would bring her to that point? And again, this goes to show you that um just because you may be successful in one area of your life does not necessarily mean that you have what it takes to be you're healthy in other areas. You're healthy in other areas. And I think this is a prime example of there maybe being an imbalance. You can get to the point where you're so focused on your career that you neglect other areas of your life, and that neglect can lead to really, really, really unhealthy and toxic consequences. Shout out to Tell a Wet Boy for the 4.99 on the super chat. I appreciate it. She said if she likes it, then I love it. Right. Well, I mean, she don't like it no more now with being over $6 million in debt and without a career or without her restaurant. She don't like it anymore. But she did it at the moment. Or she liked it enough, for things to happen like that. Shout out to I see Crimson Q in the building. Okay, so I see you watch. I just watched this on Netflix. It was the stupidest thing because she was trying to finesse him and got. See, okay, and that's another thing too. Because you look, there's some people. There's different perspective on this, right? There's some people that are saying, okay, she married the dude because the dude lied to her. That's another side note. The dude lied to her at the beginning and said that he was a multimillionaire. So some people are saying that she married him because she thought that he had money that was going to help her business go to the next level. So that's one side of the story. Other side of the story is that she got emotionally taken advantage of. So there's all these little different things. But at the end of the day, I bring you back again to my previous point. She had dudes like Alec Baldwin hitting on her, pursuing her multiple times, and she literally said he would come at me, and I would respond with, "You should get a dog." That is literally what he said. He was like, "You shouldn't date me. Get a dog," and she would send him pictures of different dogs that he could buy. That was her response. That was her response. And then lo and behold, this dude from nowhere comes out of nowhere and finesses her. So that's what I'm saying. It's like she had opportunities. She had there were different areas in her life where I'm sure she could have met men who would have treated her nicely or put her in a better position, but somehow she was drawn to this. And she said that she's like, you know what? Now I understand how people can get pulled into cults. I can understand how this can happen because there was a lot of emotional manipulation going on here. We can all speculate. But the only way a situation like this is going to happen is if somebody is not in their right mind. They're not dealing with their emotional baggage. You're not dealing with what's going on. And that's what I'm saying, lovely ladies. Sometimes in the pursuit of being career driven or in the pursuit of being a boss babe, sometimes you can overlook those very real emotional feminine needs that we have. Just because you want to do the modern woman thing does not take away that God-given desire to be protected, that God-given desire to be loved, that God-given desire to be in a relationship. Like many of us still have that hard coded in us. And when we try to work against the laws of nature, or we overlook those issues, we overlook the fact that okay, maybe we do feel lonely when this happens, or we do feel depressed when we're not doing this thing, or we do feel unfulfilled when we're not working. If we don't address that stuff, that is what sets us up to be vulnerable, vulnerable to people who have bad intentions. And I do think that is what's happened here. Whether or not she was trying to finesse him or vice versa, we both know both of them were not mentally in a good place, and that is why they probably connected to one another, because they weren't mentally in a good place. For all we know, Alec Baldwin could have been a great option. In the Netflix series, she said that she even kind of kicked herself. She was even like regretting the fact that she didn't give him an opportunity. Well, duh. But she's looking back now and being like, man, like I shouldn't have given him an opportunity. But she maybe was not at the place emotionally to do so. Maybe he was a little bit too stable for her. Maybe he was kind of boring. Maybe he wasn't as mysterious and as dark, or you know what I mean. Didn't have that allure that this man did at the time. Who knows? It's the classic. Is this the classic good girl likes the bad boy kind of setup? Who knows? I see Kim. Okay, let me see. He said she got him with him because he did lie and say he was rich. Then she got with him and he started manipulating, but she kept going through for pay. Right. Yeah. So we did see that. And that was like I said, one of the theories. But here's the thing though. This is what I didn't understand, right? When Alec Baldwin was hitting her up, he had money at that time. He was a well-known actor. So it's like if she just was trying to be with somebody that had money, she had opportunity for that. So that's to me where it gets a little speculative. It's like, okay, was it just about the money, or like I think there were a couple of things happening that really made her to this brought her to this decision. But either way, we know somewhere down the line she was obviously taken advantage of. That's not to say that she was obviously a culprit in this. She was, obviously did make some bad decisions, but she was. My bigger point is the emotional state that she was at, the spiritual state that she was at. Even though she was successful in her career, she was vulnerable. She was vulnerable. She was vulnerable. Yeah, you said Kim the Curious says, I guess you don't see her as a victim, right? um, and that's my point. Sometimes we can be so focused on trying to level up or boss up, that we make really bad decisions and overlook the obvious signs. If she already knew that she had maybe different emotional issues or challenges, she was feeling lonely or depressed when she was not working or whatever. That could be an opportunity for us to check in. And that's the thing about it. I think sometimes we do feel those things. Sometimes there's women, you may have anxieties, or you may have those insecurities, you may have panic attack, you may have all these different things that happen when you're not in your job, when you're not busy keeping yourself distracted. But those things, they just don't go away. They just don't go away. They don't go away. And sometimes if they're undressed, they come back to bite you with a vengeance. And again, this is a prime scenario of somebody who, that area of her life was untaken care of, unfortunately, and it led to utter disaster. I'm not saying this is going to happen for everybody, but I think there's a point that needs to be made that just because a woman is successfully financial, or financially successfully, or she's successful in her career, does not make her a prime candidate to be a wife. Does that mean that she is ready to be a wife? Or does that mean that she's ready to even be in a relationship? This is a common mistake that I've heard. Sometimes I've heard women literally be like, "Oh, even on campus families, y'all, you've probably all heard it. Women who say, "Oh, I want to get married eventually, but I'm focusing on my career right now." As if once their career gets to a certain point, then they're going to be ready to get married. Then they're going to have all the skills that they need to be a wife, whatever. And that is a fallacy because the two do not coincide. Just because you are a boss babe, or just because you're good working in a corporate space, or you know how to do some hair good, or you know whatever, you know how to you have run a good side business, whatever it may be, does not mean that you have the quality and the character necessary to actually maintain a healthy relationship. They're two totally and completely different things. And I think so often in the pursuit of trying to be a boss babe, or in the pursuit of trying to level up, we as women can forget that, and we can think that the two are they coincide, and they do not. They're not identical. Like, they're completely different areas of what it means to be a woman. And it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous, like I said, when those things are overlooked. And so, if nothing else, nothing else, I want to dispel the myth that a woman who is successful, a woman that does have a career or has money, that she is automatically gonna be ready to be in a relationship. No, sometimes it could be quite the opposite. Sometimes a woman can spend 15, 20 years focusing on a career. She's put little to no effort in her relationship skills. And now, even though she's maybe in her 40s and 50s, mentally, relationally, she has the skills of like a 13-year-old, or the skills of like a teenager, and she still has to learn because she hasn't developed that aspect of herself. She hasn't developed that side. So I think it, yes, it is possible. It is completely possible to have some form of career, or have something that you do that you love, and also still attend to those other aspects of your femininity, your spiritual well-being, your emotional well-being. It's possible to do both, but don't think that just because you've done one, you've done the other. No. Like I said, just because you've gone to college, and maybe you've gotten some multiple careers, and maybe you're good at your job and you get promotions, that money, that accolades, that career, that notoriety does not mean that at the end of the day, when you go home, when lights, camera, action aren't on you, when you're not calling the shots at a meeting or whatever it may be, or you're not pursuing your career, that does not mean that you were, everything's perfect. That you just, now a man just needs to take you as you are, and it's going to be all tulips and roses. No, not even, not even. Um, yeah, yeah, and that's the thing about it. He says, I see, it's the idea of workers. I think when it comes to success, they think they are going to have all this free time with success. It's the opposite. Absolutely. He said the strong and he said the strong, independent woman version of resting femininity. Absolutely, absolutely. This whole resting in femininity, what does that even mean? What is like what like tell me, when has there been a period of time where being feminine, being a woman, being an adult is equated to doing nothing? Like help me understand. Like I think that's what children do. Children, they have naps, and they rest, they sleep a lot. They don't have responsibility, they're taken care of. That's what children do. But as adults, men and women, we all have responsibility, we all have work. And of course, yeah, yes, rest is a part of being an adult. We all need to sleep, we all need to have times of leisure. But being a feminine woman does not excuse you from responsibility, or excuse you from work, or excuse you from having to do certain things. So that whole term of resting in femininity, sometimes I think that can be misused uh as an excuse to say, "Oh, I shouldn't have to do this. Oh, I shouldn't have to work. I shouldn't have to work at that. I shouldn't have to work at this." And I'm like, "No, that's what a child would say." If you're an adult, we actually do have to work at certain things. We don't just get things just because. Like, you got to work at it. Usually, most things, all things worth having, they come at a cost. They come at a price. So yeah, that whole saying of resting in femininity, I think it's misused, y'all. I think it's misused. Anyways, y'all, if you're on here, get those likes up, tag anybody, share this with someone that you think may find it interesting. And so yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. Y'all, I really wanted to say mostly that at the end of the day, this series showed me I think there's so many different things that you can take from it. And depending upon how you watch it, you may see it a different way. Some people think that she was trying to finesse him and got. Some people think that she was emotionally taken advantage of. There's different theories of the story. All we know at the end of the day is that it was a mess. It was a toxic relationship. She's now $6 million in debt, over $6 million in debt. They're divorced, and she's without a restaurant. This is a woman that before she met him was doing very well, was financially capable. Her business was taking off. She was in a great spot. She met this dude and things went south. Things went south. So it's like there's so much you can glean from that, just as far as toxic relationships, just as far as, water takes its own level. It really does, y'all. And this is why I talk a lot about, accountability, about really, really, really seeking out a good connection with God, really understanding having a healthy emotional state, because it don't matter what kind of money, what kind of success, whatever. When I say water takes its own level, you thinking about relationships, like those are reflective. So if you're unhealthy, you're likely gonna attract somebody who was equally as unhealthy. It may be in different components, it may be in different ways and scenarios, but that's what we do. Relationships are reflective. So sadly, whether or not we want to believe it, they were at the same level emotionally. When they met, when they decided to marry, whatever, they're at the same level, and it just turned into a total fiasco. And that's why I'm saying, if nothing else, I think women who are, especially who want to pursue careers, need to understand that, contrary to what is often portrayed, and contrary to what is often I think what is often said to us women time and time again, just because we have our stuff together, just because if you have been able to level up and secure your bag or whatever, that does not mean that you are still yet and ready to be in a relationship, because those are two completely different skills. Knowing how to work right in a corporate setting, knowing how to run your own business, knowing how to be an entrepreneur, whatever that may be, whatever thing it is that you're pursuing as a woman, does not mean that you have the skills necessary to actually have a healthy, functional relationship. It does not. Those are two complete different things. And I think that is where, doing our work, working with people, as I said this before in previous videos, I think when it does come to wanting a healthy relationship, because many of us did not come from healthy functional backgrounds, or didn't come from, seeing our parents married, or seeing people in our family married, or seeing how the dynamic, a lot of us are just making it up. We're just kind of, we're just making it up. We don't know. We have no point of reference. And so I think some of us, we do have to maybe work a little extra to go find mentors, find people in our life, or find examples of people uh to help us, figure out, okay, what does healthy actually look like. That might be, spiritual counseling. Like I said, when me and my husband we were engaged, we got some different spiritual counseling from different pastors, and maybe something like that. And maybe you do some therapy, maybe you do some relationship courses, maybe you read some books, maybe you do all of the above. But it's like, seek out some mentorships. Like you have to, sometimes you have to be really, really, really proactive, to figure out what does healthy look like, especially if you've come from a broken background. She did come from a broken home. Her parents divorced when she was very, very young. And they talk about in the story that when her parents divorced, how she handled it was she went upside in her room and she just went under her bed and she just stayed in her bed. She just stayed. That's how she handled it. So we so that's what I'm saying. A lot, some of us, we do actually have to do the extra work to figure out what does healthy even look like. But that is my bigger point. They are two different things. Being successful in one area does not mean that you are going to be successful in another area. And it is possible to work at both at the same time. But if you don't, okay, if you decide to focus so much on a career and put your relationship on the back burner, when you decide to focus on the relationships, if you haven't put no energy into it, it's still gonna be a struggle. It's gonna be a struggle. And like I said, this was a really rather probably rare and extreme example of a woman who was successful in one area, another area maybe went, it just wasn't addressed, right? It wasn't a primary focus, and unfortunately, it got her in trouble. It got her in trouble, and now she's having to pay for it. And so that is, to me, that is the one thing that I really took away from it. Yeah, after I see this isn't a race thing, Dusty's. Shout out, thank you. Okay, thank you. This, like I said, you can find dust in all areas, literally all areas of the hemisphere. Okay, in all ethnic groups, you will find Dusty Pookie. I mean, this is the most pookiest railway dude I done seen. This dude, like I said, ran through his first wife, walked off and left her, and took all her stuff, and left her with a baby. and then randomly goes and finesses this woman. I don't even know that. I don't even know. We don't even know if she knew that he was married at first. Like, I don't think she was aware. But either way, he finessed a lot of women and had a gambling addiction. So we know Pookies and Railways come in all shades. Okay, so that's another thing where I feel like you can't. You got to look at the person's character. You got to look at like their internal qualities. You can't just be so caught up in how they look like, because that'll get you in trouble 100% of the time. That can get you in trouble, a lot of trouble, and get you having a lot of lost money. So, anyways, yeah. See, I've seen good and bad marriages. Yeah, and that's the thing about it too. I do hear this fear mongering about marriages because many of us did grow up in broken homes, or some grew up in single parent situations, or they saw a cousin or auntie, or they heard of that one horrible story where the marriage went south. And so there's so much fear associated with marriage and so much fear associated with commitment that there's a lot of people who would rather not even do it. Um, so, but here's the thing about it. It's like, I think the issue there. You said, I sure he's already joined the Divestor Protect. Oh gosh, goodness. Sorry. Y'all in those comments. Sometimes you guys sometimes in these comments. Um, Now I lost my train of thought. What was I saying, y'all? Oh yeah, okay. So about the fear mongering about marriage, like everybody and their mama can find that one random situation where the marriage just fell apart. Everybody and their mama can do that, but you can also find a situation where the marriage didn't, and where it worked, and where it stayed together. And so I think it's also important to be recognized when we're fear mongering. And at the end of the day, we already know. Even if you don't want to believe me or whoever, like if you just look at the numbers and look at what is going to be a better situation and what is going to be a better scenario for children being raised in, young, children being raised in, it's going to be within the context of a marriage and a committed relationship and a family. Okay, families build communities, and if the family is broken down, then we can't. Then it's like, of course, the community is going to be broken down. And so I hear a lot of fear mongering around modern women today who are like, I don't want marriage. It's like, okay, if you don't want marriage, that's fine. But now, if you have a kid, which many of them do, you have a kid and you're not married, we can't act like that's going to be the best setup. At least based on what we've seen statistically, we just know that is not the best setup. And that puts women, especially in very, very, very vulnerable positions. So it's so interesting to me how there's all this fear mongering associated with commitment, okay, and raising children in a stable environment. There's all this fear mongering around that, but nobody wants to talk about the fear associated with actually having to raise kids by yourself and the real life repercussions if you find yourself in that situation. Listen, I'm not here to try to shame anybody or make anybody feel horrible if they found themselves in that situation. There's plenty of single moms out there who they did what they did. They look back and they're like, yeah, that was a mistake, whatever, whatever. The child maybe wasn't the mistake, but the choice was. However you want to look at it. Either way, there's plenty of single mothers that find themselves in that situation. But my thing is, listen, uh I don't think that should we shouldn't position that as like this is the ideal scenario. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to me that we would fearmonger or behind something that would actually be better for the society, at the very least better for kids, and then there'd be zero to no smoke associated with a choice that actually tends to be a lot more detrimental for women and the child in the long run. When you look at, the amount how more kids who grow up in single parent households tend to have, more crime, especially when it's from mothers, tends to be more crime, just tends to be more issues in general of how they act when they're adults. The rates of poverty are a lot higher around, women that have single mothers that have kids. Like the rates of poverty are much higher. So it is, if you really want to fearmonger, like I would think there should be more fear associated with that, associated with bringing kids into this world without outside of the context of a committed marriage. So I don't understand that. I don't understand that. But nevertheless, it does happen. It does happen. So, anyways, y'all. Also shout out to, again, I appreciate you again, man. You coming through. You are coming through this with the 15 on the Cash App. I appreciate you. Dapper Gents, I appreciate you. Like I said, you are coming through. And shout out to all my supporters, y'all. Like I said, I appreciate you for just being here, for walking with me. Like and subscribe and sharing the content. Send the love on the super chat. Send the love on the cash app. Like I said, this is a group effort, so I appreciate all of the love and support. I really do. I could not do this without your guys' support. So, thank you for those of you who are rocking with me. Um, yeah, and I see that fear mongering about marriage is a problem. Yes, absolutely, it is a problem, especially if, to me, it seemed like a lot of the women have fear monger around marriage either have kids or want to have kids. And I'm like, okay, can we actually have an honest conversation about how that does and likely will impact the kid? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, literally, you have females use situations like this, right? Or women who use situations like this and be like, see, this is why I don't want to marry a dude. He got married and took all our money. And I'm like, okay, first of all, let's just be honest. There are red flags to begin with. There are all these red flags to begin with, but she still chose to marry the dude. Um, and second of all, it's like for every bad situation that we can find, we can also point to a good situation. So really, we can fearmonger all we want around this, but the reality is, if you do want to bring kids into a scenario in particular, that's going to be a better setup. And like I said, I know I'm going a little bit on a rant, but it's interesting because I especially saw that talk on the Daily Wrap Up crew, and I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, wow, like there is a huge pushback to wanting to have a marriage, and these women have kids. A lot of these women have kids, and there's no talk about how that decision to have kids outside of marriage, generally speaking, is not the best decision. There's going to be there's more financial hardship now. You have a less support. That's one less person there to help manage the kid. Especially if you don't have fathers. Like, there's no situation where not having a father in the kid's life is positive. Like I mean, unless the father is like completely and totally abusive or chaotic, which you would hope that you wouldn't get impregnated by somebody like that. But 9.9 times out of 10, there's no scenario where a father not being in the kid's life is going to be positive. So it's like, I just, I don't understand. I don't understand how, like I said, there's fear in one area, but there's not fear, or at the very least, an honest conversation about the other scenario of, okay, if we are going to do this whole thing and do it, raise a kid by ourselves, what could that mean? So yeah, those are my thoughts. Those, what I say. Wait, so what I say? Would you say that that's more common in women that have children and wait too long to have another committed relationship? Wait, okay, I'm trying to understand the question. I don't think I understand the question. But anyways, yeah, so that's y'all. That's all I wanted to say. If you haven't checked it out, you might want to, or if you don't, that's fine. But basically, this just shows me, y'all, at the end of the day, just because you can run a successful business or you're a boss babe, or you level up, whatever, don't mean that you got the skills necessary to actually have a successful relationship. So please, 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 if you do want to pursue a career, that's fine, but don't feel like you have to still neglect the other. You can do both. You can do both. I interviewed a woman a few months ago who's been married almost 40 years, and she's like a VP of her company. I think she works at like AMX or something. She's very successful. She's been in corporate for a couple of decades, incredibly successful, has raised 3 kids, pastor's wife, works in corporate, very successful life. And she told me, she's like, hey, you can do both. She's like, you can uh be a wife, and she's very clear about, she's a submissive wife. She goes and job and she does what she needs to do, and she comes home and she still submits to her husband, who's the pastor, the leader, spiritual leader of the home. She's like, so I still do that, but but this is an area God's gifted me in corporate. God has gifted me with these different attributes, so I use it to help build my family, to help to help bless my family financially. I'm still there for my kids. So it's like, just because she had this one area of life where she's successful doesn't mean that she neglected her relational side, didn't neglect being a mother. So it's like, it is possible to still have an area of yourself where you are doing what you love to do, but that doesn't mean that that's an excuse for you to know how to not have relationship skills. And far too often we can hide behind, oh well, I'm trying to get a degree, or I'm focusing on this, or I'm focusing on that, as if you can't do both, as if it's not possible to you know what I mean, it's not possible to like read for an hour and then go on a date, you know what I mean? Or go to work, and then after you go to work, go meet a guy or go cook for somebody. You know what I mean? Like we act like it has to be all or nothing, and that's just not balanced, because like I said, if we do that, we still have those emotional needs there. We still have those desires to be relationship. We still have those desires to protect. Those are hard coded in this. They do not go away. So it's very dangerous when we neglect that side. And in some instances, we can find ourselves being taken advantage of. And I think that is what happened in this particular scenario. You know, but like I said, there's a lot to be there's a lot to be questioned. We heard all things from her perspective. If we heard things from his perspective, that might add another side of things, because I never like to just villainize anybody. I think all people have a capacity for good and evil, and I think we see that happening in the scenario. One can argue that she was taken advantage of, and she probably was, but she was also guilty. She made some bad decisions, and who knows? She could have been trying to finesse him, and he just finessed her back, and it was a whole toxic setup. Either way, y'all check it out. If you do watch it, let me know what you think. Leave it in the comment sections. And like I said, women, if you are bossing it up, leveling up, good for you. Just please do not think and do not neglect the relational side of your life. Please do not, because like I said, if you do, you may find yourself in a setup that is vulnerable. You might. You might. Your body's always talking to you. This is my personal trainer tells me. She's like, your body's always talking to you. Like if you have pain in your knees, if you're feeling this or that, your body's always talking to you. And she uses that as a way to be like, hey, like if you're working out, if you're doing certain things, like listen to those signs, because your body is telling you, hey, work on this. Maybe I'm tight here. Maybe we need to strengthen this here. It's the same way with an emotional state. Like our body is always telling us what we need to attend to. Just sometimes we are not listening to it, or we are just suppressing it. And I think, again, that can be very dangerous, especially for women who, I think, at the core, at the nature, we are women. We are made for relationship, and we don't tend to that side of ourselves. I think it can be very damaging. So, um, he said his mugshot not helping him much. Just saying, it's not. It's not. Um. Oh, I see what you're saying. What I'm asking is, do you believe women can focus on themselves and come back to relationships later? Yeah, no, I don't honestly know. I think you can do. I think you should do both. Now, there are exceptions where it's like maybe extreme exceptions. Like I know some women who they've gotten out of like crazy stuff, like sex trafficking, like prostitution, like crazy stuff. So it's like, yeah, in a situation like that, you do need to sit down and be by yourself, because I wouldn't recommend you to anybody with where you're at. So in those extreme cases, but even then, it's like that doesn't need to be like a 20-year process. You don't need to be working on yourself for like 25 years. That's I mean, you can, but I'm like, I don't think it's that. I don't think that's necessary. I think more often than not, you can do both at the same time. Listen, women, aren't we always talking about our ability to multitask? Okay, we can do all these different things. So it's like, if we can multitask, why can't we multitask here? Okay, why can't we multitask and, still do things that we love, and still also tend to relationships and learn how to relate with people around us and learn how to nurture healthy relationships? Like, why does it have to be either or? To me, that sounds like, what do they call it? That is a poverty mindset. That is not an abundance mindset. um, oh, you said, wait, if she the victim, why does she have mugshot? Yeah. Oh, if you didn't hear, yeah, they both ended up in jail, y'all. They ended up in jail. The whole narrative goes that she was victim. They said that she was emotionally manipulated. Now, like I said, y'all can watch. If y'all end up watching it, y'all let me know what you think in the comment section. I'll be curious. Let y'all come back and let me know what you think. But the whole story goes, the way it's played out is that they got together. He emotionally manipulates her by selling some story about he can help keep her dog immortal. And if he helps keep her dog immortal, all she needs to do for that to happen is she needs to just trust him and have faith in the process. And the faith in the process required her to just continually send him money. So throughout their marriage, she was continuing to send him money that he was going and gambling. And they're asking, well, why are you doing this? Like, you're a smart woman. Like, why would you allow him to defraud over $1 million from you? And she was like, I was emotionally manipulated. So that's the setup, and that's why they both ended up in jail, because at the end of the day, it got to the point to where she could not even pay her employees, because the money she was supposed to use for payroll, she used to give to him for him to gamble, and they win the run. So that's the story. That's the story. Like I said, if y'all want to watch it, check it out. Let me know what you think. But anyways, I appreciate all of you guys. I just wanted to touch upon this real quick. He said, of course, it's the dog taking place. That's, yeah, y'all. The story. Listen, listen. The story sounds low key crazy, but there is. I will say this: there is a like a pipeline between raw veganism and like new ageism and different stuff like that. Like I remember, y'all. I went to a few vegan out here in the Bay Area. They actually have this thing called the Veg Fest, the vegetarian festival, where it's like it's just all plant based everything. And so I went there a few times to like I volunteered there, work with a few raw vegan chefs. It was fun. And also I saw some really weird things. I saw some really kind of like I don't want to even say new agey. I don't even know what it was, but I just saw some like weird stuff that I'm like, I don't is that supposed to be spiritual? Like I'm confused. So they were in the documentary, they were kind of alluding to the fact that sometimes when you can get into raw veganism, you can kind of get into these extremist spiritual practices that can sometimes take you off the edge. So I don't know if that's why they kind of were saying, oh, well, the sell for her was that he could keep her dog immortal because she loved the dog so much, and spiritually, that's where she was at. I don't know. The whole thing sounded like a mess. The whole thing sounded like a mess, and there could be. I'm sure there's some parts of the story that we may never hear. We got to leave it up to the speculation. But at the end of the day, like I said, women, please do your work. I have nothing else, and let this be an example that being successful in one area does not mean that you're going to be successful in all areas. And please listen to yourself. She, as I said, the thing that stuck out to me was that literally in the first episode, she was like, "Man, I was lonely. I was feeling this kind of way. I was feeling that kind of way." So there were signs. There were signs telling her, like, "Hey, take care of yourself. Like, make sure you're dealing with your emotional well being." Like, so there were different signs, but I think because she was just so focused on trying to build her business, trying to focus on the career, she didn't deal with that, and then that again made her vulnerable to this situation, and that could happen to any of it. That could happen to anybody. So the whole thing was a mess. He said Shay saw a vegan duck build. Yeah, I don't even know that actually I should recount what I saw at that vegan festival. It was just weird. I don't even know how else to say it. It was just certain things. It's just like you just gotta be there, and I'm like, this is. I need to get out. So, and yeah, she was lonely. She was lonely, and who knows? Maybe the mysterious, because he came on being very dark and mysterious. Like, I mean, dark as far as like not sharing details, and she kind of found it alluring. Maybe that's some excitement that she needed. Who knows, y'all? We could all speculate. I'm not her. We could. I don't know. But what we do know is that the whole thing was a mess, and I think there's some things that, at the very least, you can take away from it. So check it out if you haven't. Um, check it out if you haven't, and like I said, let me know. Leave it in the comment sections. I'd love to hear your perspective. Anyways, thank you guys for hanging out. Again, if you would like to show support to the show, hit the Cash App or the Venmo, Shay Sade. Also, yeah, stay tuned for other interviews and yes, I say will it be pre-recorded? Wait, is what gonna be pre-recorded live? I'm confused. Yeah, anyways, okay, stay tuned. I have a few interviews coming up this week and some more topics that you should find interesting. So yeah, stay tuned and we will talk later, guys. Peace out.